like anywhere in Richmond, Virginia.
Top 5 favorite bands: Fugazi, Tragedy, The English Beat, Joy Division. I'm American, so I have to count on my fingers. I'd say Bob Marley and the Wailers. 5. Invisible Colony is the first track off of our record Iron Front. It's got to be one of the most aggressive songs we've put down in our 10-year career as a band. We unanimously decided to make that the beginning of the record. It has this quality to it that we've never reached before, kind of dissonant. To us it feels like it's kind of like the opening in like the battle for the future that our record Iron Front kind of tries to describe, both personal and global. In our country, there's these billion-dollar media elites controlling and dominating the discussions about social rights and human rights. And these are conservative, right-wing, evangelical, Christian fascists. So we've been seeing all of this like right-wing street activity, like calling President Obama a Nazi, for example. And it's things like this. And all of it seems to be code for like organizing people along like a kind of militarized, delusional line that could get racist. So Invisible Colony is about trying to take back the managed perception of our lives. I read a lot of Guy Debord, who's the Frenchman who wrote The Society of the Spectacle, and he talks a lot about this, how we live in a mediated format as individuals. We don't really connect. We don't really reach each other. It has to do with industrial civilization, but it's also the way that we're controlled. And so Invisible Colony has to do with trying to smash that control and take power back. And when I explain the song, it's longer than the song itself. Obama. So we are from the historic South. Richmond, Virginia is the capital of the Confederacy, the separatists in the American Civil War. And there's all these monuments to these Civil War generals from the losing side all over our city. And there's kind of an aristocratic Southern defensiveness about the environment where we grew up. So and we were always struggling as an anti-racist, like leftist, human rights counterculture, punk rockers, in a place that's very conservative, very racist, and has this celebrated, distorted history of military valor. It's interesting. So I guess during the election, November 4th, we had a show, like in the historic African American part of our hometown, where there's museums and there's activists, and it's a very liberal place. It's just this particular part of our hometown. So we had a show at an art gallery, and then we saw that our state in the American electoral map went blue, which means voted Democratic, voted for Obama, which is the first time our state has done anything that wasn't just the most conservative, evil thing. Everyone was cheering. Everyone came out from all the neighborhoods, African American, white, like poor, middle class, everyone coming out from all sides of the city to hold each other by the shoulders and jump up and down. This doesn't happen in America. Like, nobody goes out of their homes with strangers and has a public show of emotion. Like, it's something I know in France all the time. It happens. But so this was incredible. Now it's a year later. He's a president. He's a servant of the historic war machine and the empire and the corporate wealth of our nation. So every hour, it's easy to see that even if he was a moral man and an intelligent man, that the odds of any kind of historical truth and justice are being pushed against him. Again, it is so much better than the other option, than John McCain, but we can't be given these options of negation anymore. A two-party system is a mess. So we will continue to stand against the kind of like messianic moralism of any presidents. I mean, presidents are kind of powerless puppets in our system, and it's a shame. He probably would have been better off just writing books and being a professor. he'll probably be less stressed out if he took that path. But it's interesting, you can tell, right, that I kind of like it. I don't know him. And you know, as a punk band, we hate presidents. We hate the democratic system. The electoral system is a farce. Our country is run by undemocratic billionaire corporate lobbies. But still, there's a connection with this man that so many people feel that we've never felt before with an American president. They're always these idiot sons of wealth and privilege like George Bush. They're always like essentially princes and dukes, you know? Obama isn't. That's what's interesting. He's grew up with a single mother, and just because of his wit and charisma, he's found himself in this position. So it's more complex, but I think it's better to be a punk band screaming against a president who isn't an easy target than to rock against Bush, because that was like a cartoon almost. Now we can really talk about these policies, these corruptions, and it's more than just one man, it's the whole system. And that's really important to us because we need the depth of critique that shows. Fat Records. So we were just talking about Rock Against Bush, and that was an interesting time for us as a band because it was kind of a big party of different kinds of views. There were people there that didn't believe in the vote. There was people from the Revolutionary Communist Party. There was Anti-Flag. There was Fat Mike. All of these folks have really different ideas, but for that moment, it was really important to try and get people to get Bush out of office. And it didn't work. It was 2004. We had another 4 years of that bastard. So we're no longer on this label anymore, but we have a lot of love for them. I think Fat Mike is creative, intense. We're really proud of our record, Dead FM, that was on Fat Records. But I think it was time for us to get back to our roots, to East Coast hardcore, and Bridge 9 is a good label for that. We're starting to write Iron Front, songs like Invisible Colony, and we realized that it had this attack, this heaviness that a label like Bridge 9 would be able to complement. So in a way, having a relationship with an independent punk label, for us, it's almost like a bandmate. They kind of bring something creatively to the way the record feels and looks and is presented to the world. So I don't really identify very much with maybe what's happening right now with Fat Mike and his celebrity and the glorification of drugs and that kind of behavior. I know what his intention is. His intention is to be like a shock value punk rocker, screaming at the American Christian right from the highest stage he can, saying like sex, drugs, and rock and roll are okay, and they are, and trying to say that like all the homophobia and the sexism of American mainstream culture needs to be confronted. I just don't know if things like Cokie the Clown really do that job. I think it's vague at best. And I think it's damaging to a lot of the kids that look up to him. And I mean, I definitely believe it's important for punk to be a social revolution and to be a shock. Not just a bunch of kids talking about theory. I get it. But I think that the way Fat Mike is presenting himself now is nothing that we necessarily want to be that close to. We don't understand it. He's a millionaire. We have to work jobs when we come home from tours. We have no real way to relate to what he's doing. At the same time, like, I know him. I know he's a good man. So I feel like something's going to come out at the end of this long, strange road he's on. Bridge 9 is a straight-edge hardcore label, and we're happy to be a part of that. And it's sort of like our roots, the way we used to, be on Jade Tree Records and all that. So it's important for us. Obviously, we think Fat Mike has really good taste with bands like Dead to Me and Teenage Bottle Rocket. And any other bands on Fat that we love, we will tour with and build relationships. Because it's not about like labels as a sports team. It's about this entire independent punk community globally. And we know Mike believes in that, so we have love for that part of his interesting relationship to media is both kind of embarrassing and kind of intelligent. So he's a fascinating creature for sure. France. That's right. We have been a punk band that has had the honor of coming to France 8 times. We started at Jazz Boat, Blues Cafe, Blues Boat, and then the Bateau Phare, the slightly bigger boat, and then tons of other different venues all over. We've played in Lyon, we've played near Bordeaux, we played in Toulouse, we're going to play in Marseille, other places I can't even remember right now, maybe Annecy. France is huge and so diverse and with amazing culture, and I love it. I mean, I think it's incredible to be here. The people are really warm and generous. the shows are how punk shows should be, like brilliant and fast and intense, and I don't know, I love it. I also think there's a lot of French theory and philosophy and anarchistic ideas that are really important and kind of inform punk rock in a neat way, like Guy Debord, the writer that I mentioned. I also am a big fan of Aimé Césaire, who was the great French African nationalist thinker, and he did a lot. He wrote Discourse on Colonialism, and it was an amazing book about like third world consciousness and first world empire. So that was one of the books that really put me on this path as far as writing songs and lyrics and all that. So Aimé Césaire, Discourse on Colonialism, I'd be very proud of him if I could claim him for my country. Touring in Europe is awesome. There's so much detail everywhere. Like I was mentioning how different southern France is from the north and the east and the west and the interior. Oh, so much. Like, I think all of Europe has there's the way that punk rock is interpreted here with squats and post-squats and youth centers. It's here the messages seem to soak in faster than in the U.S. Like, it has resisted being co-opted as a purely commercial kind of angry rock and roll for teenagers. And the U.S. punk rock has this dangerous relationship with becoming that kind of cartoon. Seems like all over Europe, it's deeper and it's well defended as something that is like a folk movement that sounds like the collapse of cities. So I feel like punk rock in Europe is still very vibrant, exciting. We went to Latvia. We flew from Paris last February after that show with Rise Against. I flew to Latvia, played a show there, our first in the Baltics. And then we took a cold van through Lithuania to Belarus and got across the border in Belarus and played a show in Minsk. And then took a train from Minsk to Moscow. So we keep trying to expand our idea of Europe and trying to bring the messages and the ideas, and just for ourselves to see these beautiful places and to have the hospitality of all the fine, hardcore punk rock men and women in all the cities. When we were in Moscow, there was a neo-Nazi bomb threat on the club. They also threatened to meet us at the train station for combat to prevent us from playing in the city. And one of the people that had come, one of the Rash, the anti-racist Russian skinheads, had come to protect us at the club. He was assassinated 2 weeks ago outside of his house in Moscow. His name was Uncle Vanya, Ivan Kostolo, which means bone crusher, and he was one of the leaders of the anti-racist skinhead movement in Moscow. And he came to our show not really knowing our band, but just out of a sense of duty to protect us. So we just want to send out a dedication to the people that are missing him right now. That we only had his company and strength for just 10 hours, but all of the kids in Moscow and Russia not only had it for the 30-odd years of his life, but will continue to have it in the future if they keep his memory alive. Oh, Rise Against? We just got a message from them. They're in our hometown now while we're out here playing a show. They're really good people, good friends, generous, invited us on tour. We've known them for years, their earlier bands and stuff, so I feel like it's they obviously have they're in a different world of music, like in a way than we are, but our roots are the same. So yeah, they took us on tour here. It was amazing. We had a really good time. But anyway, merci beaucoup. Merci.
Fine.